Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars shift as his massive fleet moved through space. The Terran expeditionary fleet stretched for miles in every direction. Hundreds of enormous black ships moved together like a pack of hunting wolves. Each vessel was covered in weapons that glowed with deadly energy. These weren't ordinary warships. They were monsters of metal and fire that had terrorized the galaxy for years. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers. Jake's officers worked at their stations, their faces serious and focused. They knew what was coming. They knew what the aliens thought they were here to do. But Jake carried a secret that weighed on his heart like a stone. His fleet wasn't what it appeared to be. In the communications center, the message went out across all frequencies. This is Commander Morrison of the Terran fleet. We will arrive in 72 hours. The words were simple, but Jake knew they would strike fear into every alien heart that heard them. That was the point. Fear made things easier, even if it made him feel sick inside. Light years away, on the blue and green world of Zephyria, Governor Veltar was having the worst day of his life. The tall, bird-like alien stared at the communication screen with his 4 eyes wide with terror. His feathers were standing on end, and his hands shook as he reached for the emergency alert system. "All citizens, this is your governor," he announced, his voice cracking with fear. "The human terror fleet is coming. We have less than 3 days to evacuate. Please remain calm and follow evacuation procedures." But there was no calm to be found. Across the planet, millions of Zephyrians panicked. They had all heard the stories. Entire star systems had gone dark after the human fleet arrived. Worlds that had existed for thousands of years simply vanished. The humans were like a plague that consumed everything in their path. Families grabbed what they could carry and ran for the spaceports. Children cried as their parents rushed them onto crowded transport ships. The elderly were helped by younger relatives, everyone moving as fast as they could. The highways were jammed with vehicles heading toward escape routes. Some aliens abandoned their cars and ran on foot when traffic stopped moving. Governor Veltar watched his people flee and felt his heart breaking. This beautiful world, with its crystal cities and floating gardens, would soon be nothing but empty space. At least, that's what he believed. On the human dreadnought Earth's Vengeance, Captain Lisa Reynolds sat in her command chair, studying tactical displays. Her ship was one of the largest in the fleet, armed with enough firepower to crack a small moon in half. The crew around her prepared weapons systems and checked targeting computers. To anyone watching, it looked like they were getting ready for war. Lisa was a tough woman who had fought in battles across the galaxy. Her short brown hair was streaked with gray, and her blue eyes had seen too much death and destruction. But tonight, those eyes were sad. She hated what they were about to do, even though she knew it was necessary. "Captain," her weapons officer called out, "all gun batteries are ready for bombardment." "Acknowledged," Lisa replied, but the words felt like ash in her mouth. If only the aliens knew the truth. If only they understood what the humans were really trying to do. But the truth was too dangerous to reveal. Too many lives depended on keeping the secret. The fleet continued its approach, a dark cloud moving through the stars. Behind them, they left empty space where worlds used to be. Ahead of them lay another civilization that would soon vanish from the galaxy. At least, that's what everyone believed. Jake Morrison closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of command pressing down on him. Tomorrow, they would arrive at Zephyria. Tomorrow, the aliens would see their world disappear. And tomorrow, Jake would add another burden to his already heavy conscience. But he would do it anyway, because sometimes saving lives meant being seen as the monster. The Terror fleet moved forward through the darkness, carrying its deadly secret toward another unsuspecting world. Admiral Rick Wade watched from his command bridge as the first wave of alien defenders approached his fleet. The Galactic Defense Force had sent their best warships to stop the humans, but Rick knew how this would end. It always ended the same way. His fingers drummed nervously on the arm of his command chair as he gave the order that would seal the alien's fate. All ships, engage targets. Make it quick and clean, he commanded into his headset. The space around the Zephyrian system exploded into chaos. Massive human warships opened fire with weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Bright beams of energy lanced out across the darkness, striking alien vessels with devastating precision. The alien ships, with their sleek curves and elegant designs, stood no chance against the brutal efficiency of human engineering. Captain Troy Hansen piloted his fighter through the burning wreckage of what used to be the Altarian Defense Squadron. His small craft moved like a deadly dancer between the floating pieces of metal and crystal that had once been proud warships. Behind him, his squadron followed in perfect formation, their energy cannons charging for the next target. "Troy, we've got 3 more bogies coming in from Sector 7, his wingman called over the radio. "I see them, Billy." "Let's finish this quick," Troy replied, pushing his fighter's engines to full power. The alien ships tried to fight back. Their commanders were brave, Troy had to give them that. But bravery meant nothing when your weapons couldn't even scratch the enemy's armor. The human fighters moved through the alien formations like wolves among sheep, their advanced shields deflecting every shot while their own weapons cut through enemy defenses like paper. One by one, the alien ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Troy felt sick watching it happen, but he kept firing. This was his job. This was what needed to be done, even if the aliens would never understand why. Back on the massive colony ship New Hope, Chief Engineer Pete Bradley monitored his vessel's weapons systems from a control room deep inside the ship's hull. To anyone looking at his screens, the New Hope appeared to be a floating fortress of destruction. Its hull bristled with cannons, missile pods, and energy projectors that could level entire cities. But Pete knew the truth. Hidden behind those weapon arrays were something else entirely. Massive cargo bays filled with supplies. Medical facilities that could treat thousands of patients. Living quarters designed to house entire populations. The New Hope wasn't a warship at all. It was a rescue vessel disguised to look like humanity's most terrible weapon. "Sir, the outer weapon pods are showing green across the board," his assistant reported. "Good. Keep monitoring the power levels. We need to make sure this show looks real," Pete replied, adjusting the energy output to make the ship's weapons appear as threatening as possible. The battle raged for 6 hours. Human ships moved through the alien defenses like they were swimming through water. Every alien formation that tried to stop them was destroyed within minutes. The humans seemed unstoppable, their technology so advanced that the galactic races might as well have been throwing rocks at steel walls. Admiral Wade watched the tactical display as the last alien resistance crumbled. Red dots representing enemy ships winked out one by one until the screen showed nothing but the blue icons of his own fleet. Another victory. Another step closer to their real mission. On planets across the galaxy, alien news networks broadcast emergency reports about the human advance. Terrified reporters described weapons that could destroy entire fleets in minutes. They spoke of human ships that seemed immune to all forms of attack. Fear spread like wildfire through alien civilizations as they realized that nothing could stop the human war machine. What they didn't know was that every destroyed alien ship had been scanned first. Every crew member's location had been logged. And in the human fleet's medical bays, teams of doctors and engineers were already preparing to save those same aliens they had just defeated in battle. The human fleet continued its advance toward the Zephyrian homeworld, leaving behind empty space where once proud alien fleets had patrolled. But in the cargo holds of the colony ships, thousands of alien civilians from previous conquests slept safely in stasis pods, unaware that their supposed destroyers had actually saved their lives. The galaxy trembled in fear of humanity's unstoppable advance, never suspecting that their greatest terror was actually their only hope. Galactic Intelligence Officer Kethera sat hunched over her computer terminal in the depths of the Galactic Council's most secure facility. Her 6 arms worked frantically across multiple keyboards as she tried to decode the intercepted human transmissions. For months, her team had been capturing fragments of human communications, but the messages were always encrypted or incomplete. Tonight was different. Tonight, she had captured a full data burst between two human ships, and what she discovered made her blood run cold for entirely different reasons than she expected. "Command, this is Medical Transport 7, the first voice said in the recording. We have successfully evacuated another 2 million civilians from the Altarian system. They're safely in stasis and ready for transport to Sanctuary Base 12. Kathera's 4 eyes widened as she replayed the message. Evacuated? The reports had said the Altarian system was completely destroyed by human weapons. But this message spoke of evacuation and stasis chambers. The second voice responded, crackling with static across the vast distances of space. Copy that, Medical 7. How are the refugees adjusting to the new colony worlds? Any problems with the atmospheric processors? Negative, Command. The Zephyrians we relocated last year are thriving in Sector 12. The children especially seem to love their new homes. Dr. Anderson says their birth rates are actually higher now than they were on their original world. Kathera felt her world spinning around her. Refugees. Children thriving. New colony worlds. None of this matched the intelligence reports that described humans as galaxy-conquering monsters. She quickly called up more intercepted messages, her claws clicking rapidly on her keyboard. Message after message painted the same impossible picture. Humans talking about medical supplies, food distribution, and educational programs for alien children. They discussed the challenges of terraforming new worlds and the joy of watching rescued civilizations rebuild their cultures in safety. But the most shocking revelation came in a heavily encrypted personal message between two human officers. "I miss Earth so much, Kelly. Sometimes I dream about the blue skies and the smell of rain. But then I remember why we're out here. Those things, those devourers, they didn't just destroy our world. They consumed it completely. Nothing left but empty space where our home used to be." Dr. Kelly Watson sat in her medical bay aboard the hospital ship Sanctuary, reviewing the latest batch of evacuation protocols. Around her, hundreds of medical pods hummed quietly, each one containing an alien civilian in peaceful stasis. These weren't prisoners or slaves. They were refugees, just like the humans who had rescued them. She pulled up the files on her latest patients, a family of crystalline beings from the Andorian system. The parents had been injured when their world's evacuation had gone badly, but they were healing well. Their 3 children slept peacefully in smaller pods nearby, completely unaware of the terror their people had felt when the human fleet arrived. Kelly remembered that day clearly. The Androians had fought desperately against the human invasion, not knowing that every shot fired by human weapons had been carefully calculated to disable rather than destroy. Not knowing that the massive human ships weren't there to conquer their world, but to save every living soul on it. Dr. Watson, her assistant called out, "We're receiving the first batch of Zephyrian civilians. Colonel Hayes says they're coming in scared but unharmed. Prepare isolation wards 12 through 20, Kelly replied. And make sure the psychological support team is ready. This never gets easier for them." Meanwhile, on the surface of Zephyria, Colonel Ben Hayes watched as his soldiers guided terrified alien families toward the transport ships. The Zephyrians walked with their heads down, their colorful feathers dulled with fear. They believed they were being marched to their deaths. "Keep them calm," Ben told his troops over the radio. "Remember, these people think we're monsters. Be gentle but firm. No sudden movements." Private Johnson looked confused as he helped an elderly Zephyrian male onto the transport ramp. "Sir, why don't we just tell them the truth? Wouldn't that make this easier?" Ben shook his head sadly. "Because, son, if we told them that Earth was destroyed and that something worse than death is chasing us across the galaxy, they'd panic. Mass hysteria would kill more people than our deception saves. It's better they think we're conquerors until they're safe in the new colonies." The loading continued through the night. Families were carefully kept together, children were given small toys to comfort them, and medical teams made sure everyone was healthy before entering stasis. To the aliens, it looked like processing for slavery or worse. In reality, it was the most careful relocation operation in galactic history. Hidden in the cargo holds of ships designed to look like weapons of war, entire civilizations slept peacefully as they traveled toward new homes far from the spreading darkness that had already consumed humanity's birthworld. The humans had become refugees in order to create refugees, saving others by accepting the role of galactic villains. The terrible irony wasn't lost on any of them. The alarms started screaming across the Galactic Council's capital world at exactly 1427 Standard Time. But these weren't ordinary emergency signals. The sound was wrong, distorted, as if reality itself was having trouble processing the noise. In the command center deep beneath the planet's surface, technicians stared at their instruments in complete confusion. "Sir, we're getting readings that don't make sense," the lead sensor operator reported, his voice shaking. "There's something coming through space near the outer defense grid, but it's not showing up properly on any of our scanners." Admiral Zekthor, commander of the Galactic Defense Force, leaned over the displays with his three eyes narrowing in concentration. What he saw made his stomach turn. The sensor readings showed empty space, but also showed something that couldn't exist. Objects that were there and not there at the same time. Ships that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Then the first devourer fully materialized, and reality began to scream. The thing that emerged from the tear in space defied every law of physics the galaxy had ever discovered. It was massive beyond imagination, but also seemed to exist in spaces that were too small to contain it. Its form shifted constantly, sometimes appearing as a writhing mass of darkness, sometimes as geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. Where it moved, space itself began to unravel. Stars flickered and died as the creature passed near them. Planets simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but consumed so completely that they had never been there at all. Even time seemed to bend and twist around the monster, creating pockets where past and future collided in impossible ways. Fleet Admiral Beth Carter received the emergency transmission aboard her flagship just as her human fleet was preparing to leave the Zephyrian system. The message came through on frequencies that shouldn't have been able to carry across interstellar distances, crackling with distortions that made her crew's instruments spark and smoke. "All human vessels, this is Galactic Command. Unknown hostile entities have breached our reality near the capital. Request immediate assistance. Our forces they're not working. Nothing we have can touch these things." Beth closed her eyes and felt the familiar weight of command settling on her shoulders. This was what they had been running from. This was why they had spent years being hated across the galaxy. The Devourers had finally caught up with them. "All ships, change course for the galactic capital. Maximum speed," she ordered. "And prep the dimensional disruptors. It's time to stop running." Major Kyle Wright was stationed aboard the Galactic Defense ship Triumphant when the first Devourer attacked the outer defense perimeter. He watched through the bridge viewports as his ship's most powerful weapons fired at the impossible creature. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids, quantum torpedoes that could crack moons, energy beams that burned hotter than suns. Every shot passed harmlessly through the Devourer as if it wasn't even there. "What is that thing?" Kyle whispered, pressing his face against the reinforced glass. The creature moved through space like it was swimming through water, its form constantly shifting and changing. Sometimes it looked like a massive jellyfish made of pure darkness. Other times it resembled a geometric nightmare of angles that shouldn't exist. The worst part was what happened to the ships it touched. The galactic cruiser Starblade was the first to make direct contact with a Devourer. Kyle watched in horror as the massive warship simply began to fade away, starting from the point where the creature had brushed against its hull. The ship didn't explode or break apart. It just stopped existing, as if it had never been built in the first place. "All ships, retreat to minimum safe distance," the fleet commander ordered, but his voice was filled with despair. There was no safe distance from something that could erase you from reality itself. That's when the human fleet arrived. Beth Carter's ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that the aliens had feared for so long. But now, for the first time, those weapons began to make sense to the surviving alien observers. Dimensional disruptors, online, Beth commanded. Quantum phase cannons, target the reality breach points. Temporal stabilizers, maximum output. The human weapons opened fire, and something incredible happened. The energy beams didn't pass through the devourers like the alien weapons had. They struck the creatures and actually caused damage, tearing holes in their impossible forms and forcing them back toward the reality tiers they had emerged from. Kyle Wright stared in amazement as human fighters swarmed around the devourers, their small but incredibly advanced weapons systems designed specifically to fight enemies that existed partially outside normal physics. The humans moved with practiced precision, like they had fought these things many times before. "My God," Kyle breathed. "They know how to fight them. The humans actually know how to hurt these things." Across the battlefield, alien survivors finally understood the truth. The human fleet's massive weapons, their paranoid defensive systems, their ships that seemed built for impossible enemies, it all made sense now. Humanity hadn't been preparing to conquer the galaxy. They had been preparing to defend it from something far worse than any normal military force. The war that really mattered was just beginning. The final battle for the galaxy's survival raged across 3 star systems simultaneously. Admiral Tony Jackson watched his tactical display with growing despair as more devourers poured through the dimensional tiers. His battle group had been fighting for 18 straight hours, and they were losing ships faster than they could count. "Sir, we've lost the destroyer Phoenix and the cruiser Atlantis," his communications officer reported, her voice tight with exhaustion. "The remaining evacuation transports need at least 4 more hours to clear the civilian populations from the core worlds." Tony looked out at the swirling chaos of battle through his bridge viewport. Massive human warships were locked in desperate combat with creatures that seemed to mock the very concept of reality. Some devourers appeared as writhing masses of living shadow that consumed everything they touched. Others took forms that hurt to look at directly, geometric impossibilities that made veteran spacers vomit just from seeing them on their screens. "Then we give them 4 hours, Tony said grimly. "All ships, form up on my position. We're going to hold this line no matter what it costs us." His battle group consisted of 12 heavy cruisers and 43 smaller vessels. Against any normal enemy, it would have been a formidable force. Against the devourers, it was barely a speed bump. But sometimes a speed bump was all you needed. The human ships moved into a defensive formation around the evacuation corridor, their experimental weapons systems charging to full power. These weren't the weapons that had terrified the galaxy for years. These were humanity's real weapons, designed specifically to fight enemies that existed beyond normal physics. Captain Julie Rodriguez led her fighter squadron in a desperate dance around a devourer that looked like a massive spider made of pure darkness. Her small craft weaved between its impossible legs, firing quantum disruptor torpedoes at weak points that her instruments could barely detect. "Julie, look out! There's another one coming up behind you," her wingman shouted over the radio. She spun her fighter around just in time to see a second devourer materializing from nowhere, its form constantly shifting between a giant jellyfish and something that looked like a living mathematical equation. Her squadron scattered as the creature reached out with tentacles that existed in 4 dimensions at once. 2 of her pilots weren't fast enough. Their fighters simply ceased to exist as the devourer's touch erased them from reality. Not destroyed, not killed, just gone, as if they had never been born. "This is Captain Rodriguez to all fighters," Julie called out, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "Keep them busy. Every second we hold them here is another 1,000 civilians who make it to safety." Meanwhile, Commander Jake Morrison was preparing for the most desperate gambit in human military history. His flagship, the massive dreadnought Defiance, had been fitted with an experimental dimensional collapse drive. The theory was simple: if they could overload the device near the main dimensional rift, they might be able to collapse the breach and trap the devourers between realities. The reality was far more complicated and dangerous than the theory suggested. "Jake, you know this is a one-way trip," his old friend Dr. Kelly Watson said over the secure communication channel. She was coordinating the medical evacuation from her hospital ship, but she had taken time to call him personally. "I know, Kelly. But if we don't try this, everyone dies anyway. At least this way, some of us make it out alive." Lieutenant Bobby Chen worked frantically in the engineering section of the Defiance, making final adjustments to the dimensional collapse drive. The device was surrounded by warning signs and radiation detectors that screamed constantly. Every engineer who had worked on the project knew it was basically a controlled black hole generator wrapped in prayers and good intentions. "Sir, the drive is as ready as it's going to be," Bobby reported to Jake over the intercom. "I've got the targeting system locked onto the main dimensional rift. When you give the order, we'll have about 30 seconds before the whole ship gets pulled into whatever dimensional pocket we're creating." Jake nodded to himself on the bridge. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. They all knew what was coming. They had all volunteered to stay behind when the other ships had offered to take on extra crew members. "All hands, this is the captain," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. "In 60 seconds, we're going to save the galaxy. It's been an honor serving with all of you." He waited for the evacuation ships to clear the danger zone, then gave the order that would change everything. The dimensional collapse drive activated with a sound like reality tearing in half. Space around the Defiance began to fold in on itself, creating a gravitational anomaly that pulled at the dimensional rifts like a cosmic drain. One by one, the tears in space began to close, dragging the screaming devourers back into whatever nightmare dimension they had come from. The explosion, when it came, was visible from 3 star systems away. But when the light faded, the rifts were gone. The devourers were gone. And the galaxy was safe. In the aftermath, as rescue ships searched for survivors and alien refugees emerged from their hiding places, the truth finally came out. Humanity hadn't been conquering the galaxy. They had been saving it, one world at a time, while running from an enemy that no one else even knew existed. The new galactic alliance that formed in the following months was unlike anything the universe had ever seen. Human military technology combined with alien scientific knowledge to create defensive networks that could protect entire star clusters. The hidden colony worlds that humans had established became the foundation for a new civilization that stretched across multiple galaxies. And for the first time since Earth's destruction, humanity had found something they thought they had lost forever, a home.